Rich, for me, Rich is a very special person. He's probably the one person outside of my family that's had the biggest influence on my life. And it's hard. I had some things. He helped me out in a very particular way, and I really wanted to tell him about it and thank him. And I can't even imagine him not being here for 4th of July, because that's when I wanted to do that. But anyway, Rich joined the HMB Lions Club in 1966. And he was president the first time in 1971. And then he was president the second time in 1984, which is when I met him. My very first meeting was a fancy dinner at the Villa Chartier in San Mateo. And I went there by accident, really. My mom had the stomach flu, and my dad paid for the dinner, and he drugged me along to her place. So I went to this meeting, and it was the night that Rich was installed as president. And I joined shortly after that, and Rich was president the whole year that I was, the first year when I was in Lions. And he, I was only 24 years old. And so definitely the youngest member of the club. And there was about half the club were older, like in their 80s. And you can imagine, if you can imagine this, old guy, men in their 80s, how they treated a boy in his 20s, which is how they looked at me, But Rich, from the moment I met him, always treated me like an equal. And he always acted like he valued everything I said and all my ideas. And he got me involved right away. I was on committees, I got on the board of directors. He even had me on a district committee once. And I wasn't even in a full 4 years when I was president the first time. And I was young, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I said a lot of immature things that were embarrassing sometimes. And Rich always called me on it in a very helpful way. He'd be like, "Well, Bobby, you really put your foot in it this time." But it's okay. Now you know, right? And so he taught me to see my mistakes as stepping stones. And the reason why that was so important for me was I'm a textbook introvert. So my go-to whenever I make a mistake or say something stupid is to, well, for one thing, I lose a lot of sleep. Probably, my mind just spins things out for days on end after something like that. And I can go 3, 4, 5, 7 days without sleep. And the other thing is, whenever I make a mistake, my instant reaction is to never do that again. Not never make a mistake again, just never do whatever it is I was doing that I made a mistake. And so Rich, kept pushing me and helping me see that mistakes are just stepping stones. And for an introvert, that's a big deal. And after several years, especially by the early 90s, it became a real thing for me. I was constantly putting myself out there doing things that were out of my comfort zone, especially if it involved public speaking. And things that I was way underqualified to do, and looking back, it's like I still can't picture myself doing some of the stuff I did. And that had a really big impact on my life, and I was really hoping to sit down and talk to Rich about that and thank him for that. And so I hope he's hearing this. And he was such a gentleman, and he was the true north of our club. He's the person that we all look to for guidance and direction for as long as I've been there, and I'm sure before that. And I've seen him around the district, so I know that he's done the same for district governors and in our district. Just a wonderful person. It's a huge loss, but I'm sure we'll all be leaning on him for many years to come. And can I get a glass of water or something? Thank you. And my dad, I don't even know where to begin. My dad was my dad all my life. Seriously, except for when I was in the service, I have never lived more than 4.5 miles from him. And we did pretty much everything together. We worked together. But at the same time, when you live in a small community, the same community your dad spent his whole life in, it's hard to be your own person, so you have to try really hard to do that, which is one of the reasons why I went in the service. I had to get the hell out of here. You know, you kind of break that. And when I came back, and you know, within a short, you know, I think it was only a year later that I went to that first Lions meeting. I didn't even know he was in the Lions. I tried really, really hard to be different, so that people around town would see me as me and not little Buzzy. And so when I look back at how I did that, it's like there's a straight line that's 42 years long, and that's the HMB Lions Club. That's the thing my dad and I did together. We love the Lions for the same reason, you know. Neither one of us needed a club or an organization to serve our community. It's just who we are. And the reason why we love the Lions and why we've been a Lion all these years was, you know, we Lions, you know, serving others is not something we do, you know, it's who we are, right? It gives our lives purpose and meaning and brings joy to our lives. I mean, look at all the pictures from all the activities we've done. I mean, we all look so happy all the time. You know, no matter how hard it is and how tired we are, it's fun, you know, we just love spending time. And basically, you're our people, you know, we're all the same, and we just like spending time with our people. And so when I look back the last 42 years, it's like you have this long straight line, which is Lions Club. And then off on one side of the line is all the stuff my dad was doing. You know, he loved to golf, and he was RV trips, all the other kind of stuff he did in the community was like fireboard. He's a volunteer fireman. You know, that's the kind of stuff he did. He was an amazing grandfather and great-grandfather. And then way on the other side of the line is me doing my thing. You know, I stayed away from golf, and that was my brother and father's thing. And to be different, I stayed away from golf. I started sailing. We had friends that had sailboats, and we had one, and we sailed. A cyclist, and you know, the kind of stuff that I did in the community was youth groups, and I taught woodworking for many years, and you know, all that kind of stuff, kind of opposite of my dad. And so here I am, and I'm looking back at all that, and I'm like, what a joke. It's like, because all I really did with all that effort was the same thing differently. I just, you know, I failed miserably at being different, and I guess that's one failure that I can be proud of. Yeah, it's a huge loss to lose both those guys. Does anybody else have